Oh man, it's a real treat to get to hang out with you guys today. Thanks for carving out some time to be here. Want to welcome all the host sites. Thanks for hanging with us today. I've been praying that God would do something really, really unexpectedly cool in every guy's heart here today. I know He does that kind of stuff because He's done it in my own life. I feel so privileged to get to do this today. I mean, I never dreamed I'd be doing this kind of stuff in my life, and to get to be here with all you guys today is just, I got to tell you, it's a real humbling treat just to be in the same room and to be with you guys that are in the host sites as well. Hey, my son told me a joke before I left, and I said, okay, I'll use it. He said that this pirate walks into a bar, and the guy goes, hey, how'd you get that peg? This is so bad. He goes, how'd you get that peg leg? He goes, arr, cannonball hit me leg, ripped me leg clean off. That's how I got me peg leg. He goes, what about that hook, man? How'd you get that hook? He goes, sword fight, cut me hand clean off. That's how I got me hook. He goes, what about that eye patch? He goes, sunbathing on the deck of the ship. Bird pooped in my eye. He goes, well, that wouldn't put your eye out. He goes, first day with me hook. I'm not even going to try to tie it in. I just thought it was funny. I thought I'd tell it to you. Hey, first session was awesome with Crawford, and he mentioned like he really loved the movie The Untouchables. I've never seen that movie. I want to go see that movie now. I want to rent a Redbox or something and check that film out. Real quickly, right off the top of your head, just turn to some guys around you, like 15 seconds, and tell them what's your favorite movie, right off the top here, your favorite movie of all time. Go. All right, I want to give you real quick. All right, let me just give you real quick. I know you're probably not interested in this, but let me give you real quickly my top 5 movies of all time. Now, when I give you my top 5, they're probably not going to be on your list, but they're on my list, so I got my own list. And I want to preface this by saying I had a hard time keeping Dumb and Dumber and Princess Bride off this list. I love those 2 movies, so they're kind of like honorable mention. But top 5 for me, number 5 is just a brilliant movie. It's part of the trilogy. Don't even have to say what the movie is, the trilogy. Of course, I'm talking about Toy Story 1, 2, and 3. Those are like my favorite. I love those movies, those Toy Story movies. Pixar, make all films. They're just awesome. Number 4 for me is kind of a graphic, violent movie, but I love it. It's based on a true story because it's about how Scotland won its freedom. Every time I'm flipping channels and Braveheart comes on, I want to paint my face blue and go pick a fight with somebody, man. It just fires me up, and I love that line where William Wallace is riding along his troops. He says, all men die. Only a few ever really live. I go, yes, give me the paint. I want to go, got a pitchfork. I want to go fight. It just fires me up. Number 3 for me probably wouldn't make your list, but I loved it because I used to watch it as a television show when I was a kid. It was about this this doctor was accused of killing his wife, but he didn't do it, a one-armed guy. It was a movie called The Fugitive with Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones. Great movie. It got bus crashes and train wrecks. There's a swan dive off a dam. It's just an awesome movie. I love The Fugitive. Number 2 for me probably didn't even make your radar, but I love it because there was some mental health issues in our family, and sometimes you just have to kind of laugh about it. It's about a neurotic guy named Bob. It's a movie called What About Bob, and he just drives the psychiatrist absolutely crazy. It's a really funny movie to me. It's Bill Murray and Richard Dreyfuss, but there's a scene in the movie just cracked me up. He's got all these doctors around him. Bob does the Bill Murray. He's got all these doctors around him. He's just cracking them up. They think he's the funniest guy ever. And he has this great line where he says, roses are red, violets are blue. I'm schizophrenic, and so am I. I just thought it was a great line, man. That's just a great line. But my top movie, and I don't endorse the whole thing, but I walked out of this movie, I thought, man, that's some of the best cinematography, some of the best acting I've ever seen in my life. Just a weird, cool, clever story. It was it was just, I thought the soundtrack was amazing. And I learned three really profound things by watching this film. The first profound thing I learned was this: life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And I learned that stupid is as stupid does. That stupid has nothing to do with your IQ, but everything to do with your decision-making ability, your discernment ability, your promise-keeping ability. And the third thing I learned, man, was like so freeing for like a speaker guy, for like a pastor dude, was because I used to work like really, really hard on the conclusion to my talks. And when I saw that movie, Forrest Gump, I thought, when I get done, I can just go, that's all I have to say about that. Just move on. Next topic is like freedom. This is awesome, man. But that movie, man, it came out like 20 years ago now. It's unbelievable. Won an Oscar for Best Picture. But when it came out, it kind of captured the nation. This simple guy that's trying to keep his promises and love people the best he could. But there's a scene at the end of the movie that just marked me. He's standing at the grave of his wife Jenny, who dies at a very early age because she made a lot of bad decisions. And he's standing there looking at the tombstone, and he asks a question. He says, I don't know whether it was Mama or Lieutenant Dan who was right. Do we just kind of show up accidental-like and float around accidental-like a feather on a breeze? Or do we have a destiny? And I thought when I heard that, man, that's the question that every person who ever walks this planet has to come to grips with. Do we just kind of show up accidental-like, or is there a purpose for our life? And I look around our culture, I know you guys do too, and I see so many people, especially so many guys, who have kind of bought into option number one. And I get it, because very early when we first start school, we're told that we came from nothing, and we're going to nothing. So basically everything in between is kind of accidental-like. We kind of show up accidental-like, and we float around accidental-like a feather on a breeze. And if that's true, then there is no destiny. If there is no destiny, there really is no plan. If there is no plan, there really is no purpose. If there is no purpose, there really is no such thing as truth. If there's no truth, there's no right, there's no wrong. And that's why the one word that sociologists have been using to describe our culture for the past 2 decades is the word, it's a big word, whatever. Whatever. And I get that, don't you? Because if we just show up accidental-like and we float around accidental-like a feather on a breeze, it all is kind of a big whatever. Because I used to be that guy. And I'm guessing that a bunch of you guys probably have been there as well. You talk about a whatever kind of guy. That's the way I was all the way up through high school. It all was a big, whatever. And make matters worse, I grew up in church. And I don't know how many of you guys, anybody grow up in church? You guys grow up in church? How many grew up in church, but you would just say, you know what, I just went to church. I didn't know God. That was me. I just went to church, man. I was living 2 lives. I had 1 foot in the light and 1 foot in the darkness, and trying to fake out whoever I was running with, whichever crowd I was with. And man, it was exhausting trying to live 2 lives. It's just hard being phony. It just is. I mean, this is why the Bible says the person who takes crooked paths will be found out, because you can't cover all your tracks on a crooked path. You can't remember all the lies you've told to which group you were running with, and it was exhausting trying to live 2 different lives. And for me, being that whatever kind of guy, God was just a spoke on the wheel of my life. I mean, I had sports, I had job, I had friends, I had God, I had school. It was just a spoke on the wheel of my life. That's what I did. I didn't realize that Jesus Christ created me to be the hub of my life. That God wasn't mad at me, God wasn't disappointed in me, God wasn't disgusted at me, that God loved me and He wanted to be like the hub of my life, and that everything else in my life could revolve around that relationship with Him. Well, I was in high school, and I was really getting tired of living that phony kind of life, and I met this girl. That's kind of the way it always happens, isn't it? I met this girl named Debbie, and how can I describe her to you? Hot, that'd work. She was just so cute, man. So amazingly cute, and I was drawn to her immediately, but there was something else about her. She just had this beauty that really did radiate from the inside out. It was the first person I thought I ever met that, like, wow, I think she knows God. I think she really loves God. And the way she loves other people, man, she's just the real deal. And there's not an ounce of phoniness about her. And I can remember saying to God, God, that's what I want in my life. And if I could get her too, that would be like awesome. So I'll try to pursue both, but I really went after her. In our high school student ministry, we're going to go on a retreat up to northern Minnesota. I'd never been up to northern Minnesota in my life. Why you'd ever want to go north of Milwaukee, I don't know. It's really, really cold. But we were going in the summertime, so we're going up to northern Minnesota for this church retreat. And these guys were trying to invite me to come. I said, what do you do? They said, well, we just kind of, sit around, we talk about God. And I'm going, well, that's kind of lame. And I said, is that Debbie girl going? They said, yeah, she's going. I said, sign me up, man. The only reason I went on this church retreat was to pursue this Debbie girl, and I pursued her with all that I had for that entire week. What I didn't realize is that God was pursuing me with everything that he had. I've been doing it a long time, not just that week, but I got still enough in that week, like some of us are going to get this weekend. We're just going to get still enough, and God's going to be able to speak to us. Sometimes you got those moments in your life. They're just kind of like freeze frame moments. You know what I'm talking about, where you recall it and you know every detail of it. You got some of those in your life. I was actually teaching at a college down in Southern California, Hope University, last week, and I was telling this part of my story. And I'm like telling you, I'm sitting there talking to a bunch of college students, and I could like smell the smells and see the sights and hear the sounds of that moment in my life because it's that ingrained in me. So I'm on the banks of this lake in northern Minnesota. It's a Friday night, and everybody else has gone back to their cabins at night. I'm sitting out there all by myself around this campfire, and I just started talking to God. And I put my hands up in the air. I'd never done that in my life. Like the church I grew up in, if you did that, they go, you got a question or what? I mean, that's something. We didn't do that in the church I grew up in. But just instinctively, as this broken, tired 17-year-old guy, this whatever kind of guy, I just put my hands up. I said, God, I'm tired of living like this. I want some meaning in my life. I want some authenticity in my life. I'm tired of living two lives, God. I want to put my life in your hands. And God, tonight, I just want to say, I want to surrender to you, Jesus Christ. I want you to be the forgiver of my sin, like these guys have been talking about all week long, like I've heard all my life, but never really sunk in. And God, I want to surrender the leadership of my life to you. I want you to take me wherever you want to take me, God. I'm signing up tonight. And you might say that was a night for me personally that I moved from whatever to wherever. And I never dreamed that God would do the things he's done in my life ever since that day where I said, wherever you want to take me. Now, like Crawford said today, there have been some choices along the way that I've had to make to say, okay, God, I really want to put my life in your hands again today. I mean, I want to resurrender again today, and where you want to take me today. I want to listen to your voice today. I want to live in the awareness of your presence today and let you lead my life. And I got to tell you guys, it hadn't been easy. Following Jesus isn't always easy. But it's not real complicated. You love God, you love people, and you listen to his voice during the day, you say yes to his Holy Spirit, and God just leads you on these crazy, wild adventures. I never dreamed I'd get to do this with my life. I mean, people back in high school days, they're still shocked that I'm a pastor. They can't believe I'm doing this. And I just tell them, hey, God changes people. The grace of God reaches even people like me. God does that. And he does do that. I hope you know that. He pursues people like you. And I never dreamed I'd get to do the things I've done in my life. And I've been like all over the place. And like I was just introduced, I teach at a bunch of different churches. And it's just wild to look at my life and go, God, I can't believe when I said wherever that you would do this with my life. And that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about what I get to do with my life. Because I look around and I see so many people, especially I see so many men who are just living beneath their privilege of walking with the living God, of having this love relationship with God that could just lead them on these crazy, wild, faith-filled adventures that they're missing out on because they don't have any purpose in their life. There's no passion in their life. There's no compelling mission that gets them out of bed every day. They're not really rooted in God's purpose for them. You know what I'm talking about? There's so many. I meet so many guys who are just bored out of their mind. You know how it happens? They get up at the same old time, look at the same old face, brush the same old teeth, put on the same old clothes, walk down the same old kitchen, get out the same old bowl, pour in the same old cereal, eat the same old breakfast, sip the same old coffee, kiss the same old wife, get in the same old car, drive the same old way to the same old job, leave at the same old time, sit in the same old traffic, walk in the same old house, hug the same old kids, sit in the same old chair, fall asleep watching the same old sports center, get up and go to the same old bed, ask the same old wife the same old question, get the same old answer, roll over, set the alarm clock, and get up and do the same old thing over again. I know way too many guys. That's their life. That's their life. I don't know about you guys. I don't want to live same old. I don't want to live same old. Here's for me, when I was a whatever kind of guy, that's when God started speaking to me. That's that part of him pursuing me, and that part where Crawford was talking about this morning, how you plant yourself by the banks of a river, like you plant your roots down deep into God, and God starts to speak to you through his word. There's some things in his word that really spoke to me, like right when I was in that, is there a purpose in my life? Is there a destiny for me? Or am I just accidentally here and I float around accidentally? Like, well, this verse came to me. Jeremiah 29:11. You guys have seen this verse before, where God says, I know the plans I have for you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. That doesn't sound like a whatever kind of existence to me, does it you? And the verse from Ephesians 1:4, I just love the way the Message pushed this. It says, long before God even laid down the earth's foundations, he had us in mind, had settled on us as the focus of his love. Man, that doesn't sound like a show up and float around accidental like existence to me. It sounds like we got a God who is absolutely crazy about us. In fact, we, above all creation, are the focus of his love. Then I read Philippians 1:6. Where it says, I'm confident of this, I'm sure of this, that God who started the good work in you is going to keep on working in you until the day that Jesus Christ comes back. That doesn't sound like a whatever kind of existence to me, does it you? It sounds like we have a God who wants to move inside of us and do some stuff in us and through us. And what's cool about that verse? It doesn't say until the day you die. It says until the day Jesus comes back. Long after you're dead and gone, God's still going to be using your life. That's cool. And I read that verse from Ephesians 2:10 where it says, we are God's what? Masterpiece, created anew in Christ Jesus, do the good things he planned for us long ago. Man, that doesn't sound like a whatever kind of existence to me. It sounds like God's got plans for our lives, got a destiny for our life. He's got a purpose for our life. I heard about a bunch of 95-year-olds that were surveyed. I don't know how they got them all together, but they did. And they asked them this question: if you could do it all over again, what would you do differently? They responded in 4 ways. First response was, what was the question? Then once they got it, here's what they said. They said, if we could do it all over again, we'd reflect more. Like we'd slow down and we'd soak in more moments. We'd soak in more sunsets, more cherished memories with family and friends. We'd have more time with God. We'd slow our pace down. We'd reflect more. The second thing they said, we'd risk more. We'd take more chances. We would see life like it's this big adventure that you can't pick the fruit unless you're way out on a limb somewhere. They said we'd take more chances. We'd walk by faith. The third thing they said, if we had it to do all over again, we would do something with our life that would live on long after we're dead and gone. And I heard those things. I thought, you know what, man? I'm not waiting until I'm 95 to say those things. I want to reflect now. I want to risk right now. I want to do something right now with my life that's going to live on long after I'm dead and gone. This is the way I've been talking about this for a long time now, and I've been teaching this out and trying to live it in my own life, because I know how some of you guys get in a pool. You're toe dippers, right? I mean, you walk up to a pool and you go like, whoo, that is cold. And then it's your foot like, whoo, that's cold. And your ankles, oh, it's cold. Your calves, whoo, knees, whoo, thighs, whoo. Woo, all the way in, you're getting this pool. Go, ha, 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 ha. That's no way to get in a pool, man. How do you get in a pool? Yeah, you take a run and start, and you tuck up your knees, and you do a cannonball, and you hit the water, and the water goes flying, and the ripples go out and hit the side, and they come back in, they go back out, and they come back in, they go back out, and if you're really big, they come back in, they go back out, and they come back in, they go back out. But if the sides of the pool weren't there, the ripples would just keep going and going and going and going and going and going and going long after you made your splash. And I think that's what God calls us to do. He says, come on, man, live out your purpose. Live out your destiny. It's not an accident you're here. Do a cannonball and touch a life. who will touch a life, 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 and long after you're dead and gone, your life will still be touching the lives of other people. I don't know whether I have made a lot of ripples in my life. I pray someday I'll get to heaven and I'll find some I never knew about. I never dreamed when I said wherever to God that I would ever be a church planter in the city of Las Vegas. Planted a church there a number of years ago. It was one of the joys of my life. I mean, it was one of the highlights of my spiritual journey, planting a church in Sin City. In fact, we refused to call it Sin City when we lived there. We called it the City of Grace because where sin abounds, grace abounds that much more, the Bible says. So it was so cool to watch people get ambushed by the grace of God. And when people found the grace of God, it really was like that story that Jesus tells about the person that finds a hidden treasure in a field and sells everything they have to go buy that field. That's the way it was. Like, this is what I've been looking for all my life. And I don't know whether I rippled on a lot of people there in Vegas, but I do know I rippled on one guy. His name is Jeff. And I was playing basketball at the YMCA. I'm a basketball junkie. I still love to play, although it's really sad these days. Just sad. I mean, I was playing a rec league with my sons not long ago, and there's a loose ball about 3 feet away from me. I thought, somebody needs to get that. I'm not bending over. I'm not getting on the floor. I mean, that three-point line is like an electric dog fence to me now. I'm not stepping inside because that hurts when you go in there. So it's sad. But I was playing basketball at the YMCA on a regular basis. And our church was meeting at the YMCA. That's how we started our church. We started meeting at the Las Vegas YMCA, which was an awesome place to do church. Everything it took to do church came off the back of a Ryder truck. Anybody in a portable church, you know what I'm talking about? You're doing church plant type stuff. It's a lot of hard work, but it's a whole lot of fun. So everything it took to do church came off the back of a Ryder truck. I'm talking lights, sound, stage, cribs, carpets, everything, chairs. And in fact, when we would see like another U-Haul going down the street, we thought, what denomination is that? You know, it's just like every church. We thought every church does this. Well, we'd set up the YMCA every weekend, and then I'd play ball there during the week. And I was playing a ball one day, and this guy pulls me aside. Our team got beat, and he pulls me aside and says, hey, can I talk to you for a second? I said, sure. He goes, my name's Jeff. I've been coming to your church that meets on the other side of this curtain. And he goes, I see you here playing ball and stuff. And I thought, man, if I get the chance, I'm going to talk to him someday. And dude, I want to preface this by telling you I'm a really smart guy. I got a degree in physics. I was a small college All-American quarterback. I make a lot of money, own my own business, but my life has fallen apart. I'm living two lives. I go, man, I can relate to that. He goes, really? I go, oh, yeah, absolutely, man. He goes, I have a huge gambling problem. I can't stop. He said, I don't know if it's my competitive nature or what, but I can't stop, but I'm lying to my wife. I'm hiding funds all over the place. It's leading to a lot of other stuff. I can't stop it, man. So the other night it got so bad. He goes, again, I'm a really smart guy, but the other night it got so bad. I'm playing video poker in a casino. I run out to my car and I search through the seat cushions looking for change so I can go back in and keep playing. He goes, man, I can't stop it. He goes, and I come to your church here and sit in the back and think maybe God has some answers for me. I said, dude, listen, my dad was a compulsive gambler. God does have answers for you. And so we started meeting on a regular basis. And make a long story short, Jeff did, when he was 35, what I did when I was 17 and surrendered his life to Jesus Christ. And God just moved into his life, did a 180 with Jeff's life. I mean, I wish you could meet him. He was just one of the most dynamic, on fire Christ followers I know. So I'm sitting at home one night in Vegas, and I get a phone call from this lady in St. Louis. I don't know how she got my home number to this day. She calls me up and says, is this Mike Breaux? I said, yes, ma'am, it is. She goes, you have a church in Vegas? I said, yes, ma'am, we do. She goes, well, our son is 21 years old. His name is Gary. He's a football player. He's a big boy. He's got a drinking problem and a gambling problem. We think he's headed to Vegas. Could you keep an eye out for him? I'm thinking, okay. 36 million people come to Vegas every year. Keep an eye out for him? You got to be kidding me, right? Hey, if you guys don't know this already, like 36 million is nothing for God. He pursues you like you're the only one on his heart and mind. That's what he does. Well, about an hour later, I get a phone call from that mom again from St. Louis. She goes, hey, he's in Vegas. A hotel manager found him passed out in the parking lot, put him up for the night. Here's where he's at. Gave us the address of this little hotel. And so she said, could you do something? I said, yes, ma'am, we'll do something. I hung up the phone and thought, okay, what are we going to do? I thought, Jeff, I'm calling up Jeff. So I call up Jeff. I go, hey, Jeff, I got a guy for you. Jeff goes, cool, man. He goes, big dude, played football like you used to play, gambling problem like you used to have, got a drinking problem, man. Go get him. Jeff goes, I'm on it, man. So Jeff goes down this little hotel behind the strip, 5:30 on a Sunday morning, because Jeff was one of our captains for our setup crew. He knocks on the door of this hotel at 5:30 in the morning, and Gary's this huge guy. He's like 6'4", 250. Opens up the door, fills up the door frame with himself. He's completely hungover, doesn't know what's going on. And Jeff goes, hey, my name is Jeff from Canyon Ridge Church, man. I know all about you. Your mom and dad called. You got a drinking problem. You got a gambling problem. I used to have a big-time gambling problem. I used to play football just like you, man. Come on, take a shower and go to church with me. And Gary goes, excuse me? He goes, sorry, man, I'm here so early, but we like do a portable church. Everything it takes to do church comes off the back of a Ryder truck. And, dude, you are huge. You could help. And Gary goes, all right. Takes a shower, gets in a car with a complete stranger in Vegas, drives out to Cimarron Memorial High School, where we're now meeting as a church, stands in the back of a Ryder truck, handing stacks of chairs out to guys he never met in his life, ends up setting up those chairs and sitting in one of those chairs that weekend, and that day did what I did when I was 17 and Jeff did when he was 35. At 21 years of age, he surrendered his life to Jesus Christ. And what's cool about the story for me is that Gary rippled on a guy named Darnell, and Darnell rippled on a guy named Chris, who's like rippled on hundreds of people. See, just one life touches a life. Who touches a life? Who touches a life? Who touches a life? Who touches a life? When I think about ripples, I think about my buddy Harold. I went from Vegas back to my hometown in Lexington, Kentucky, and Harold came up to me one weekend at our church, and I'd never met Harold before. He goes, Mike, my name's Harold. And Harold wouldn't mind me telling you this. He's like the biggest redneck I've ever met in my life. He's from a part of Kentucky that all of you think Kentucky is like. That's Harold. That's who he is. He just is. And he said, I know you've been out there in Sin City and all that stuff, but you ain't never met nobody that's been in as much darkness as me. And he told me a story. He was right. I mean, I'd never heard some of the stuff that Harold told me. God got a hold of Harold and transformed his life. He's such a cool guy. You'll hear Harold give his testimony. He'll stand up in front of people. It's so funny, man. It's just who he is. He goes, hi, my name's Harold. I used to be this old, filthy, smelly trash can of a man. Now I'm a bright, clean, shiny trash can of a man. That's Harold. I remember one time I had him tell a story in front of a group of pretty distinguished people. He gets up and says that. Then he says, I want y'all to know something. I'm so on fire for Jesus, there's a flame shooting out my butt that far. So I had to pull him aside and coach him a little bit on telling this story. But that's him, man. That's just him. God's transformed his life. So I asked Harold, with a little bit of coaching, to come up on stage and tell a story, and I just interviewed him, and I asked him, bring your small group with you. So he's got his small group up there on stage, got all these guys lined up on stools. So I said, Harold, how did it all begin for you? How did you start your spiritual journey? Harold looks down at the very end and goes, Stephen down there. I go, really? He goes, yeah, Stephen and I, we used to be fishing buddies. We were sitting in the boat one day, and Stephen says to me, Harold, you're so screwed up, you need Jesus in your life. Jesus has changed my life. I want to take you to my church. Maybe you can meet Jesus there. So he brought me to church, and God got a hold of me. I said, that is so cool. Thanks, Stephen, man. Way to go, dude. Then I said, Luke, what about you? He was sitting next to Harold. He goes, Harold? I said, really? He goes, yeah, Harold and I used to do lines of cocaine together. Now we do lines of scripture together. Ain't that cool? I said, man, that is cool, Luke. I said, Robbie, what about you? He goes, Luke. I mean, just all the way down the line. It was just a guy who touched another guy's life, who touched another guy's life, who touched another guy's life. That's the way this ripple thing works, guys. That's what it means to be rooted in God's purpose, living out your destiny. Just touch a life. Who will touch a life? Who will touch a life? When I think about ripples, I can't help but think now about one of my new best friends. His name is Keith. Keith lives in Ventura, California, and we've been buddies for 3 years now. A lot of people touched his life. Started with a girl named Deanna. I went to a guy named TD and his wife Jen, and then a guy named Jude, and then my daughter Jody and her husband Mike, and just a bunch of people poured into his life. And I got the privilege about 3 years ago to get involved in his life. And Keith was struggling with all kinds of different stuff. He had a drug and alcohol addiction. He was trying to get sober, so I would text him almost every day. Not every day, but almost every day. I'd go, hey, dude, day 17, isn't that awesome? Next day 18, man, awesome. Then day 63, dude, can you believe it? I remember the day I went, day 365. Congratulations, man. It has been 1 year. He was so excited to be clean and sober for a year. He went to Vegas to celebrate. All right, day 2, dude. And he had a relapse. He had to start. I said, no, you're not starting all over, because now you got God in your life. You know the right direction to walk. So it's been a joy of my life walking with him for the past 3 years. And he just took his 2-year chip like last week. So 2 years clean and sober. And he's leading an AA group. And God is just doing amazing things in his life. Keith owns a yogurt place. A soft serve yogurt place where you go in, you take your flavor and you put all your toppings on it and stuff. He owns a really good one in Ventura, California. But that hasn't always been his job. But he told me not long ago, he goes, bro, I got to go to my kid's school for the first time in my life on career day and talk about what I do. I got to take them all cups of yogurt. The kids love me, man, I go, that's cool, man. And you'll understand when you hear a piece of his story. We sat down with Keith and just got a piece of his story. So just take a listen to Keith's story.
I squandered wealth, and I lived lavishly for many years without thought of God. From an early age, I didn't feel accepted, partly because, my mother and my father, when I was born, were incapable at that time in their life to accept the responsibility of a child. My mother had just gotten married for her 6th marriage, and the guy she married was religious or saved, or and the experience of being whipped with a fiberglass rod and told, and scriptures read as he was, spare the rod, spoil the child. I had a bad taste in my mouth about scripture right then. The God I knew back then was like a judge, behind, when you went to court, to drop the hammer and said, to hell, and I felt that he was a condemning God, and that no matter how hard I might try to be a good person, I could never live up to that God, what he wanted from me. I remember my stepfather telling me that for every F and for every U on my report card, I would get 5 lashes. And I came home with straight U's and straight F's. And I went to school the next day, and I was bleeding and cut, and I found this as my opportunity to get out of this house. And I made my way to the principal office, and they made me strip my clothes and take pictures, called Department of Children's Services, and removed me from the home. When I was 16 years old, I saw my aunt and my uncle, and they told me, your mother had an aneurysm and she's in a coma. I had been estranged from my mother after leaving the family at that last whipping, and it had been a couple years and we hadn't really spoke. I went to the hospital. I remember the nurse telling me, sometimes they can hear what you are saying, and I took this opportunity to grab her hand, and it was just me and her. And it was probably the first time in my life that I told my mother, I said, I love you. And she died while I was holding her hand. The pain from what I experienced right then, maybe it was because I had finally told her I loved her, or it was her death, or feeling once more alone. I covered my emotions and my feelings more with alcohol and drugs than ever before. It would be the start of my downward spiral. And I kind of ran with my half-brother. We would go into the projects and rob people for drugs and come out of the project with bullet holes in our car. We would break into houses. To drink and to do drugs, you need money, and we didn't have a job. Our job was using, our job was drinking. And to be able to afford our addiction, we had to come up with creative ideas of how to gain more and use more. When I was 22 years old, I went into a bar looking to sell drugs, and I saw a man standing at the bar. I remember he pulled a wad of $100 bills out of his pocket, and I said, that guy probably needs drugs. And I went over and said, hey, do you want to buy some drugs? And he's like, no, I don't want any drugs. And I go, well, then buy me a drink. And he goes, well, get a job. And I said, well, I'm trying to find a job. And he said, well, I have a store. You can come build some shelves for me in the morning, and gave me the address and bought me a drink and thought he'd never see me again. I didn't know where he told me to come to work was an adult bookstore. And I was waiting there for him when he pulled up to build shelves. I stayed with him for 10 years. I went from building those shelves to shipping to selling to eventually leaving him and starting my own company and becoming Southern California's largest adult distributor. There were only 2 large distributors in the world, and there was me on the West Coast and another guy on the East Coast. I would never use the word pornography because it was too harsh of a word for myself. I didn't want to accept the fact that I was in pornography, so I softened it up with words like adult video distributor. I finally came to a point in my life that nothing was working anymore. I couldn't fix on buying things to cover up those feelings that go way back from when my mother died, or those feelings of feeling alone or feeling like an outsider. I can't say I was running to anything because I was running from my past, not realizing that I was running to nowhere. I was in a hurry to get to nowhere. I didn't know that God was starting to intervene in my life, and he had a perfect plan for changing my life. I remember that one of the things my friend had told me, God knew what he got when he got you. And as long as you're running to, you're running from. And so at this point in my life, I started running to God. I didn't know how I was going to change this big mess that I had. I didn't know how I was going to get out of the business or how I was going to change anything. All I could do was focus on running to God. That was the only thing that seemed to work for me at that moment. And I knew in my heart that I had to make a change. When I finally came to my senses, I had prepared what I could say to God when I came home. But when returning home, I realized it didn't make a difference what I had to say. He took me just as I was. I ran from God, and I squandered wealth, and I lived lavishly for many years without thought of God. And he took me back into his arms and accepted me and gave me grace through his son.
And if Keith were here today, he would tell you, man, if God can change a guy like me, he can change anybody. In fact, Keith is working on a book these days called From Hardcore to Soft Serve. And it's cool the way God's changing his life. I mean, I've never met a guy who's so open and humble to God's change in his life than him. And that's why God's changing him. And God's using his life. You talk about a ripple maker. The people's lives that he's touching, Probably none of us could touch their lives, but he can. Thinking about Dusty, thinking about Ross, thinking about Drew, just the people he's touched, including a guy named Greg, who was that guy 20 years ago with a wad of $100 bills that got him started. Greg recently gave his life to Christ because of Keith. See, that's the way it works, guys. Someone touches a life, who touches a life, who touches a life. When I think about ripples, just one last story. I think about Nanny. She was our 103-year-old grandma. You talk about a cool old lady. Anybody got cool old grandma in their life? She's just awesome. She lived to be 103 and was sharp up until the day she died. I remember when she turned 103, it was really cool. She was standing in her house in the same little cotton house dress she wore like every day of her life. She pulls back her sleeve and starts tapping on her watch. And she goes, you know what? 103 is old. Like 102 wasn't, you know. And she goes, I bet my mom and sisters are standing around heaven going, wonder where Ida Mae is. She should have been here by now. You don't think she went that other place, do you? I mean, that's just her. It's Nanny. She's the first person I ever heard say, when you get to be 100, don't buy green bananas. That's just good advice, really. Get them right, man, because you don't know. You don't have time to wait around for those. This is awesome lady. But we threw a big party for her on her 100th birthday party, you know, a picture on the Smucker's Jam on the Today Show, her picture in the front page of the local newspaper. And it was so cool to stand in her little bitty house on Elam Park in Lexington, Kentucky, and watch literally hundreds of people come by to say thank you to this little wrinkled woman sitting in the corner who most of them had never met in their life. And here's the deal about Nanny. That's the only time she's ever been in a newspaper on her 100th birthday. She never had any kind of fame at all. She never went to college. She never had a driver's license her entire life. She was a widow for 50 of her 103 years. She raised 6 girls. That's scary enough right there. 6 girls in a little bitty house with 1 bathroom. That's heroic. 6 girls, 1 bathroom. But you know what Nanny did? At some point in her life, she said, you know what? I am not going to float around accidental like a feather on a breeze. I'm going to put my life in the hands of the destiny maker, and I'm going to make some ripples with my life. So she poured her life and her love and her faith into those 6 girls. And you know what those 6 girls did? They poured their life and their love and their faith into their 3 or 4 kids. You know what their 3 or 4 kids have done? They poured their life and their love and their faith into their 3 or 4 kids. I stood there in amazement as all these people came by to wish this woman a happy birthday because they had felt the ripples of her life. And I'm standing there getting really emotional watching this whole thing. Because one of those 6 girls, was a girl named Molly, who had this really cute daughter named Debbie, who changed my life. You see, Jesus put it like this in Mark 8:35. He says, only those who are willing to cannonball for my sake, willing to throw away their lives for my sake, will ever know what it means to really, really live. Don't you guys want to really, really live? Just like Crawford said this morning, you got a choice. You got a choice. The choice is yours. You can choose to float around accidental like a feather on a breeze if you want to. Or you could put your life in the hands of the destiny maker, and you can make some ripples with your life. That's all I have to say about that. Let's pray together, guys. I just want to invite you at all of our sites. Let's all stand together right now. Let's just pray. And I'm asking you to stand because you might want to. You just might want to do what I did when I was 17. Just maybe even put your hands up in the air and go, God, I just want to surrender to you. And maybe just a moment of resurrender. Maybe you need to do what Jeff did when he was 35, what Gary did when he was 21, what Harold did when he was 50, what Keith did when he was 48, what Nanny did whenever, just to say, God, I just want to put my life in your hands, and wherever you want to take me, I'm signing up right now. God, I thank you so much that us being here is not an accident. I'm not just talking about us being here at this conference, God, but just us being on this planet. You put us here as the object of your love, to pour your love in us, to show us that you wanted to do life with us, and you wanted to do some things that were significant in our lives, that you wanted to do some things that were eternal with our lives, that you would use us, that you would take us as screwed up as we've made ourselves with the choices we've made, and you would transform us from the inside out, and you would use us to touch this world with your love. And God, I thank you for giving us that purpose on this planet. I thank you for having that kind of destiny with our lives. And Lord, I pray that as we go through the day here today, that we would become even more rooted in that purpose, that we would know we're here for a reason. I know, God, there are guys here today at all of our sites that are here because another guy touched their life. And they're here because another guy touched their life. God, we know this ripple thing works. It's the way it is. So I just pray that today, God, we would decide to live out our God-given destiny and just make some ripples with our life. And all who agree with this prayer said, Amen. Thank you guys for hanging out today. Great to be with you.